All right. Kofi, we know, sir, you've been through a lot in your journey, in your career. In fact, many people see you out there doing a whole lot, but they don't really know how you started, like everything, your beginnings and everything. So today we're going to look deep down and see what you've been through and what have made you who you are right now. So the first question is, who is Kofi Twumasi?
That's a loaded question. Well, first for starters, I am biologically and psychologically Ghanaian. So that's without no question. Unapologetically Ghanaian. But obviously, I was born in Barron Springs, Michigan, which is the home of every Seventh-day Adventist pastor, and the home of, you can connect it to Adventism as well.
It's called the Adventist Mecca.
The Adventist Mecca, that's right. It's Holy Land, it's our promised land. So I was born in Michigan, but I was raised in New York City, and also for a little bit in my adolescent years, I was also raised in East Africa. My father and mother were missionaries, and effectively, we grew up in a humble home. I grew up in a religious home. So my father, who obviously is Pastor Twumasi, is the person who, and of course, my mother, Felicia Twumasi, are the ones that brought me into this world. So it is through their tango that brought me into this world.
All right. Wow. Let's break it down. So let's look at your early stages in life. How was it like? Were you always the good boy, Kofi Twumasi, Pastor Twumasi? But how was it like?
I grew up humble. I would always say that. My father and mother reared my whole family in terms of my brother and sister, for our deportment to be exact and for our spiritual lives to reflect the Adventist home that we come from and to be the best that we can always be in our society. So ever since I was young, and my father said it earlier, never ever forget to seize a moment. Ever since I was young, I always wanted to make sure that I can seize a moment, because the time I was born, I knew that I had a purpose in life. The fact that I'm here had a purpose in life, and my parents effectively brought that to me. I always say my journey as to where I am starts from the fact that I was reared in a rhetorical womb. My mother does not have a doctorate, but she has literacy, and it's from her strength that has brought me to where I am today. And then my father as well, whose linguistic facility transferred over to me as a young adolescent, has helped me become the person that I am today. So I grew up humble, I grew up knowing I had a purpose, and I grew up knowing that my divine placement on this earth has a divine calling.
All right, thank you so much, Kofi. You're using big vocabs. All right, no, let's calm down again. So, many of the young people live on a borrowed faith. In your life, at what point do you finally had a personal relationship with God? At what point did you realize that, hey, I need to have my own faith?
That's very good. The moment I realized that, when I understood this exact quote, and this comes from actually Dr. Kwabena Donko, he says Christianity is not a private religion, it's a personal religion. And I effectively noticed that from a young age. Like I said, I was in the mission field when I was about 6, 7 years old. And because I was on the mission field and knowing that my father was a missionary, I had that yearning to be a part and parcel of being a person who can yearn towards God. So I always say from the time I was young, I had that awakening. But obviously, I entered into the Adventist faith in 2008, May. That's when I knew if I want to go on and be this leader in this world, I also need to have a personal relationship, because a prerequisite to being a person of God in this world requires a personal relationship. So from the time I was young, I knew I was destined for this. That's why I never chase people. I destined the divine calling God has given me.
Thank you, Kofi. So what age was that?
So like I said, around 6 years old, that's when I knew that God had ordained me for a specific purpose. But when I was about 14, 15 years old, that's when I made that next progression in life by being baptized and knowing that in order, my youth leader will always tell me, you're doing great things, but now you have to validate the great things you're doing by now going into the waters. And from that, baptism has brought me to this point as a lawyer, as a son of God, as a preacher, as an author, as a coach, and as a person who's looking to transform the life of others.
All right, thank you so much, Kofi Twumasi. One thing I always see about young people is that sometimes you literally have to force them before they get baptized. And you mentioned your youth leader's name. So how was it? Was there a time that the call came, hey, Kofi, you have to, but you deny it? Or how was that process when you finally made the decision to baptize?
That's right. In order to do better, you have to be better. And I realized for me to be better, I had to make that decision to come baptized. So to be better is a process.
Was it the first call?
Sure, certainly, it was the first call. From the time I was young, I knew I had to be a part of this faith. And it comes from the fact that I came from a home that encouraged that. You know, they're homes where people face trauma, and that victimized them in order for them to garner a relationship with Christ. I came from a home where it was open, where it was a space, where it was a place where you come into your own. In order for you to be a person into society, you have to come into your own. And my parents fostered such an environment as that.
All right, Kofi, you mentioned your parents so much. Now, let's go to, did you guys go to Uganda? Which mission?
Uganda.
Uganda. Now, let's talk about life in Uganda. Do you really remember anything in Uganda?
For sure, I have a strong memory.
So, like, share something with us about your experience there.
So my experience in Uganda, I was effectively a leader. That's where my leadership skills emerged from. I was one of those, because we are coming from America, people look to you as a leader. So from the young, I was a leader. And one of the most prominent points I saw that was my gift of helping others. You know, one person messaged me when we were in Uganda, messaged me, Kofi, you taught me how to read. So I always knew from my time as I was young in Uganda that my position on this earth is to transform others. So that's one of the most pivotal things, my ability to transform other people when we're in Uganda.
When you moved from Barren Springs to Uganda, were you disappointed looking at the life in Michigan as compared to Uganda? How was it, especially when finally, like, you go to where you guys were going to live? How was that experience?
That's a very excellent question. Well, let me start off with this. A disappointment, you always have to see it as an appointment. And yes, I was a little bit discouraged, but I was young. I didn't really know what I was going into. But I knew once I reached Uganda, the habitat had changed. The smell was different. The ambience was different. The environment was different. So it was definitely a different course.
The first night, how was the first night?
The first night, you know, it's very interesting. I actually, the second time we went there, because we'll go back on it for, I'll never forget the first night when we got there, I had a nightmare. And that nightmare, I literally was walking in my sleep. I was just thinking of what I was coming into. Because as we all know, when you're changing environments, it's never an easy transition.
Yes.
And that's one thing about life. But I did see that it was a disappointment leaving my habitat, my hamlet, my community, but I was transitioning to a place that can mold me. And in life, we have to understand your transformation is also prerequisite based on how else you're able to mold yourself.
Kofi, did you know that before going, or you are now talking from some years back, based on what you said?
Sure. I would say it in two folds.
Okay.
When I was going, I really didn't have any kind of opinion. My parents said we're going to Uganda. So it wasn't like, okay, I'm disappointed. Yes, I was going to be missing my friends, but it wasn't something that was catastrophic to me. Maybe if I was in my late 20s as I am now, the situation would be a whole lot different. But at that specific moment in time, it wasn't. And when I got to Uganda, there were elements I loved about it. I always say it was probably one of those most precocious time where we were as a family, we're so together. My mother would bake bread. We didn't have to go to the store and buy all these foods that have been processed. We were able to eat together. My father would come home for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. That time at the table, the time for us to study the word together, the time for us to go on trips together, to go on walks together. So for me, when I look at it, at that moment, I didn't have one way or another, because I also cherish that experience. And that is why I've gone on to do mission work, and I have my own nonprofit today.
All right. By the way, Safin was joining live on Facebook and now YouTube. And my story, we go different. And I guess I know Dr. Kofi Echumesi. In fact, Pastor Echumesi, in case you know, Pastor Echumesi, APC and menen train komona or cabro for kesi guyesu no. On share experience say or yes of ba. Enema of life in Uganda, enema okomu, and a okeka hawa, on one who sang in an old name, so yes, of Bantino. If you na ye modu or more towards say, or more bay frappa, and I asked him straightforward as a coffee, cannot correct me. Now, ya craboni, and I was also on the Wanya craboni, onya craboni. Coffee, I hope you get what I'm saying. Usan, how was it? Now, ya craboni, and I said, oh dear. Those labels, you were never labeled like that.
I was never given a label. And that's a very peculiar point to make here, because a lot of parents give your children labels. And imagine, when you give your child a label and they start to define with that label, it hurts their psychiatric. One thing about my parents that I love, they never gave us labels. They instead of labeling us, they empowered us. And that's what every parent should do, empower your child. That's why I always said, from the time I was young, I knew I had a purpose in life, because the purpose of life is living a life of purpose. And my parents controllably gave us that. They never labeled, they empowered.
Kofi, let's look at life in New York.
Yes.
I know New York is not a place, it's not an easy place to raise kids. How was it during your time when you guys were growing up? Were there some circumstances that could have affected your character, or how was it like to be raised in New York?
Very excellent question. And I'll hark back on your previous question, because it even makes much more fruition here. Your previous question said, when you going to Uganda, were you disappointed? You know what? I really didn't feel it then. Maybe it's because I was too young to really know that. But when we came back, and because we came back to Michigan and going to New York City, I felt that I didn't want to go to New York. For those who are 80s babies, or for those in the 90s, one of the most pushed movies, and we had this VHS in our house and we played it till death, was Lean On Me. And if you look at Lean On Me, it shows a notorious high school that's in New Jersey, led by a person called Joe Clark. And it just showed the horrors of what happens of an inner city. So when I was going to New York, I was like, oh man. I remember the first time I got to New York, I didn't even want to step out of the car. It was just the city life. And as you know, when you're from the village going to the city.
Which village are you talking about?
The Barron Springs village. When you're going from the Barron Springs to the city, that's a whole different, as the people were labeling to them, it's a culture shock. So for me, it was a culture shock going into New York City. But that is the place I love. And I don't even claim Michigan today. New York is part and parcel, wolfed and warped of who I am.
All right. Thank you so much, Kofi. Now let's move on to this side. Being a pastor's kid, you call it PK, right?
That's right.
It comes with a lot, and people have some perceptions, some notions. Oh, pastors banye, pastors' kids are always bad. Tell me the real experience. In the course, your father has pastored in Uganda, New York for years, and now in Columbus. How is it like to be a pastor's kid? What are some of the challenges do you guys sometimes face?
Well, there's a lot of pernicious perceptions about, pastors' kids overall. But I'll give one aspect here. Number one of the challenges of being a pastor's son, everyone has sinned but the pastor's son. And why do I say that here? Because the pastor's son is put on a pedestal. So one mistake that you make, one misstep that you make, one bump in your road, they will hold that accountable towards you. And one thing I've said, and I said this earlier in our experience, I learned from others, and I didn't want to make the mistake others have made. Remember, life is about elevation, not about descension. You have to ascend and not descend. And as a pastor's son, I knew that was a challenge. So I wanted to make sure we could change the stratosphere of that and ensure that as a pastor's son, those challenges are there, but those challenges won't define us. Remember, challenges are not supposed to define you. They're supposed to refine you. And I want to make sure a challenge like that, people seeing pastor's sons as being harmful, as being devilish, as being people who don't live to the standards of the Bible and live to the standards of the Christian culture. I did not want to be invited into such a space like that.
Do you remember any of those incidents that you faced as a pastor's kid, to the extent that you said, I need to advise my father to resign from this church or from the ministry? Was there any experience like that that really hit you during those moments, or even up to now?
Never. And I'll tell you one remarkable feat about my father. My father has always exuded strength. And that is what has brought me in here. The great Frederick Douglass once said, confidence, if you have confidence, you have already finished the race before it has even started. And my father, extreme confidence and able to exude strength. I never saw my father stressed. I never saw my father depressed. So for me, I saw that my father truly loved this job. Because remember, in life, you don't show up to a job, you show up to a calling. And because my father had this calling, I was never discouraged. So I was never discouraged by any animosity that my father probably went through, because my father did not see it as a job. He showed it as a calling. He showed strength, and inevitably it challenged me to become a pastor's son, faithfully, confidently, and preach to others that I am proud to be a PK. I wish I had a t-shirt that can say, I'm proud to be a PK son.
All right, Kofi, our time is not that. Okay, so let me make good use of the little time that we have. Now, there's so much to unpack. I know that there's a good relationship between you and Kwejo, Pastor Kwejo Chumesi.
That's very, very strong.
Why is that the two of you are so tight? You know, sometimes when you see some siblings, you see the conflict, the rivalry that are usually between them. What puts the two of you so tight?
Not even that, my sister as well. We're a strong family. Remember, the family that stands together, falls together, but stays united together. And like I said, my father ushered a room and ambience of familyness. My brother and I, before my sister came to this world, we were very close, right? When I need someone to play with, he was the one right there. When I need somebody to talk, we bunked together. When I need somebody to talk to, he was always right there. When I need somebody to inspire me and motivate me, he was always right there. My brother is probably one of the most motivated individuals I've ever seen and one of the most intelligent individuals. And his journey and our journeys, we have always understood that life, you have to plan all the way to the end. And we have understood that. And why we're so close, because we do the same things. We love the same things, and we're encouraged in the same way. So he's part and parcel of who I am, and I'm part and parcel of who he is. And one thing about myself as well, and this is something about all Christians to be, I admire everyone. There's never no hate. You know, when my brother took off being this preacher that everybody loved, I was amazed. I was awed. I was floored. I said, I want to be just like my brother. There's never been an issue of division among us. There's never an issue of I'm older, he's younger, so I can't take it from him. I always say to myself, you can learn from everyone and you can learn from anyone, and my brother has been my greatest inspiration.
So, like, when he stepped up during those moments, you said you didn't have that consensus, like, my junior brother is now becoming more popular than me. Was there any thought like, something like that? Was that anything of that sort?
We became popular together. and that's the remarkable aspect there, because just as he was preaching, I was his hype man.
I see.
Just as he was preaching, I was his supporter. Just as he was preaching, I was promoted. And you see, let me tell you the unique element about life. Because I saw what he was doing, I said, Kwejo, teach me, my brother. Teach me what you're doing. And you see, that's the difference between a lot of people. Because a lot of people let their egos get in their way of elevation. You can't let your ego precede your elevation. You have to let your ego subdue in order for you to elevate. And I saw a remarkable aspect of him. I said, Kwejo, teach me those skills. Kwejo has taught me a whole lot, just as much as I've taught him. We have done this together. We have gone on mission trips together. We have co-founded our nonprofit together. There was never that division. And one thing, like I love, coming back to my previous statement, my parents never gave labels. Even if sometimes I was not doing my best, my father and mother will encourage me. My father and mother will make us see that we're all equals. That's why I say my sister, even my sister, who's not even a notorious speaker, you give her the mic, she will kill it just like any other person.
All right. Now, Kofi, let's move on to your career.
Yes.
You are a lawyer right now.
Yes.
How was your journey?
Yes. Well, my journey...
Was that your dream to become a lawyer when you were in your 6 years, 7 years? Was that your dream?
Sure. Excellent question. When I was young, I knew I was extremely gifted. I was extremely gifted in various areas of life. And myself marching into this lawyer dome or becoming a lawyer comes from its genesis from when I was young. When I was 14, my first job that I got was not working at McDonald's, was not working at Burger King, was not working at Taco Bell, was not working at Macy's. I worked at the Queens District Attorney's Office under Richard A. Brown and Jesse Sly, who just retired a couple of months ago. So I had that path, and this is why I'll tell you three things. I did not stumble into my profession by accident. I arrived into my profession on the stamp of purpose, because arrival into your profession has to be stamped on purpose. You cannot submit to a profession on a dysfunctional purpose. And I knew that my divine presence on this earth had a divine calling, and that's what shot me to this lawyer occupation. And a couple of elements, what made me drawn to a lawyer was its preoccupation with verbal innovation and wizardry. The ability to use words to effectuate and change someone's life. It's like preaching in the church, but you're preaching in the courtroom. And I always had this unique, sheer pleasure of words and how words can change the voiceless, how words can change the lifeless, how words can change those that have been dehumanized. I had a preoccupation with that joie de vivre that that can be derived from words. I had that preoccupation with words, and I was always amazed at how words can effectuate others. I saw that from Johnny Cochran, from Ben Crump, and others who have preceded before me. Then as well, frustration also drew me into being this legal profession that I'm in. Because I always say pain provides clarity, and frustration can draw you into your purpose. I was born in Michigan, but I was raised in New York City. And though I was reared in a religious privileged home, I was a part of the political reality of the neighborhood that I was a part of. I was raised in Far Rockaway, where black people were going through various evils. And I saw what black people were going through, and that resonated with me, because I wanted to make sure I could be a champion for those in my community. And that's what drew me, because I was like, if I am a lawyer, I can liberate my people. Because my key aspect of drawing into my profession and becoming a lawyer, I wanted to be a person that can liberate. And at the end of the day, I wanted to go into that. And then the final thing as well that I always love to point out is that I always look and model after God, because God has to anoint your calling. And I saw that God anointed my calling, because when I look at the ministry of Jesus Christ did not have just a social ministry, did not have a political ministry, but he had a social ministry as well. And one of the texts that we see in Matthew said he came to fight for the least of these. And I want to make sure that my occupation on this earth is to fight for the least of these, because I love what it says in Robert Kiyosaki's magnum opus, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It says, you don't belong to you belong to the universe. My divine calling has been given divine permission to liberate God's people. At the end of the day, you have to make sure that your calling upsets the world, and that's what called me to the legal profession.
Kofi, thank you so much. Now, you are one of the few Adventists that march during Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about George Floyd's death. You were one of the few people who were, few Adventists, especially in the Ghanaian community, that were able to march and even show it on social media. Did you receive any backlash after marching?
Sure. So people are always going to have an opinion regardless.
They did?
Yes, and some people did, in terms of why you out there, why you championing these people. And obviously, aside from marching, I do various presentations on the law and justice. I even had one person who messaged me on Facebook, but obviously, like I said, the 99 supported me. Is only that 1% that you know, some people here and there. But I'll say this, and this is the problem with our church, and I'll make this point here. See, our church, not all, but some churches don't have a problem taking people's tithes, but are unwilling to change people's lives. Some churches and some church members are not afraid to baptize black folks, but are unwilling to advocate for them. And the problem with our institution is that we have the right theology, but the wrong missiology. But what I want to point out with me marching is that don't get caught in theological ecstasy while avoiding sociological ministry. The world is not our home, but it's our calling. And if it's our calling, then we have to liberate myself and others who have gone through a manipulation through the political reality that we're in. And for me, out of all peoples, I've seen that the Christian faith has been characterized as being weak, anemic, and sentimental. But an anomaly needs to happen, that we don't just stand and sit in the pews, but we go out and fight for the least of these. Because at the end of the day, your profession has to help the struggle.
Kofi, thank you so much. Our time is almost up. I think we need to schedule another time, because...
Can I just say one thing, Pastor, about our mission-driven purpose?
No, we'll go there. We'll go there. I want us
Okay.
to end on that note. Yes.
No problem.
I wanted to talk about mission-driven purpose. That's one thing I wanted to say. I know you have passion for mission work.
Always.
What has been the motivation, and where are you guys now? And what new project are you guys working on? So it's a spark question.
For sure. Come back, I'll hark on to what I said. The world is not our home, but it's our calling. And whatever profession you're in life, you're changed by two things. It doesn't matter how many degrees. Like I always say, don't judge me by the pedigree of my education. Judge me by my moral position in the aftermath of my excellence, privilege, and influence. We wanted to make sure that with this organization we set up, at the end of the day, life is judged on what you change and what you build. That's it. I don't care how many degrees you have, it's what you change and what you build. And at the end of the day, we set up this organization. We were young when we set up this, my brother and I, and
How old were you guys?
We were about 19, 20 years old. Very young, had no money, but we had a dream. You can kill a dreamer, but you can't kill a dream. And for us, we slept to this dream.
Deep.
We ate this dream. We woke up to this dream. We rehearsed this dream. And we set up this organization because we want to liberate, not just those in Africa, but anywhere on this planet where people need to hear God and people need to see their bones being uplifted. So we set up this organization back in 2013, 7 years running. And this year, we were not, one of our biggest events that we do is we go on a mission trip. This year, we were not able to go on a mission trip due to the COVID-19. But essentially, because of that, we decided to come up with probably one of the greatest projects we've ever put together. We're calling it the 1,000 Touches Project. And I want to break this down for people who are listening.
Okay.
Essentially, what we're doing is that we are giving money from a pool of $2,000. And I'm actually going to put this link in the chat group. We're putting out $2,000. Okay. And what we're having people do is that if you want to serve in your community, we are actually going to put the funding behind it. So what we're going to do is that if you want to buy groceries for somebody, right? Your neighbor, you want to buy them some fufu flour. You want to buy them some amuto, I don't know if they use flour, rice for that. If they want to use whatever you want to buy for a person, you can buy groceries. You can pay for somebody's gas. Say, my brother, you don't got to worry about the gas today. We're going to bless you with gas money. If you want to empower somebody in your community, pay for their college application, whatever service that you align yourself with, we want you to do that in this year. So what we want you to do is that with this 1,000 Touches Project, we want to touch 1,000 people in the month of December. And how are we doing that? We're doing that by empowering people through a pool of $2,000. So all you have to do is sign up. I'm going to put the link in the chat group. All you have to do is sign up, young or old, rich or poor, secular or sacred, tragic or comic. We want you to be a part of this project because we want to make sure that we touch 1,000 people. And you don't have to worry about the funding. As an organization, mission-driven purpose, we are giving the funding.
All right, because I'm kind of no more kind of into this project. Project I can was no friend 1,000. Is it touch 1,000 or 1,000 touches?
1,000 touches.
1,000 touches campaign. Or say adoye bi a obeyi bia no. First register. O register adoye bi a ben say bia ukoto gas. No one so be kai siwa. O de tua gas ka che nipa no so obetua. Provide receipt before no register or link no debate group no. So we nipa na doye wabra u turn gas amano or wie no utua ma no anase groceries wadi ni dwa Walmart Kroger na odi wachi na utua ma na they are going to reimburse you. Omo no betua ma o. The here say we the register na me omo hu the o person o ye na ma omo sanka receipt and they are going to reimburse you. Kofi, our time is up. As I said, no, I need to schedule for another time. Then we can talk more. Last but not least, Kofi, what are you now?
Not yet.
And what you? Not yet. So when are you planning?
Well, I always say this: when God aligns me with the right person.
So,
but if there's anybody wants to submit an application,
yourself well, though.
Well, like I said, if anyone wants to submit an application, they can do so.
Through your father or your mom?
No, they can do it through the chat group as they're listening.
All right, Kofi is single. He said he's still searching. So the young ladies out there and our parents and mama Kofi or a lawyer. Okay, Kofi, back to us. So, thank you so much for being here and at least sharing your life story with us. Maybe one last question that I might ask is that, what one thing, in case that your parents are not there, you always remember your parents of? What one single thing that you can always remember your parents of, in case they are not even around?
Strength. Strength. My father looks good. It's a great pastor because of strength. My mother looks like she's 21 because of strength. My brother looks good because of strength. My sister looks good because of strength. And I look good because of strength. One thing that my parents have enshrined into us is that strength is what will take you far. Because you cannot transform if you're not strengthened. And the key element of succeeding in life is strength. Once you have strength, you can overcome a bad day. When you have strength, you can overcome being broke. When you have strength, you can overcome the resources that you don't have. When you have strength, you can overcome division. Strength. And my parents have taught me that at the end of the day, in order for you to become a person in society, you have to have strength. And aside from that as well, you also have to rely on God. As I said earlier, it is his divine permission that has granted my divine calling. At the end of the day, it's not enough to live. You have to be determined to live for something.
Thank you so much, Lawyer Kofi Twumasi.